Okay, great. So in this next part, we're going to be talking about how to improve your credibility. And that involves what your verbal credibility, or how you speak, and also your nonverbal credibility. Basically, everything besides what comes out of your mouth is nonverbal communication. And actually, science shows us that the majority of what we communicate is actually apart from the words that come out of our mouths. So we have to pay attention to that first. Now, here we're going to talk about harnessing your ethos, your verbal ethos and your nonverbal ethos. And ethos, again, it means credibility. All right. So here is how you persuade. This is based on science. You have what you're saying, the logic. Again, that's what we talk about when we talk about the topic and cases and things like that, all right? We're not talking about that this afternoon. Then you have one part delivery, okay? That's how you say the logic, how you present those words that you say. And then you have two parts nonverbals, because nonverbal actually communicates more about who you are and your credibility than what you're saying. So let's start out talking about delivery. The scientific name for this is paralanguage. That means everything except the words. So your tone, your word order, those type of things are verbal credibility. How loudly you speak, how softly you speak. You can say, hey, you, a number of different ways. You can say, hey, you, or you can say, hey, you. All right? You can say it 100 different ways. And that's all about paralanguage. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. And this is really important in debate. So, highly persuasive speakers. This is based on different studies, and I'll get to my source in a second. But it's shown that you're more persuasive if you speak moderately fast. So before any speed debaters get excited, moderately fast really means that you know what you're saying next. It means that you're not stuttering. It means that you're familiar with your material enough that you don't have to stop in the middle of a sentence. You're speaking moderately fast. If you watch somebody who knows what they're talking about, they're not going to be stumbling over their words. They're going to be speaking moderately fast. They're not going to be rambling at supersonic speeds like we saw those guys in the video earlier, okay? That doesn't come across as persuasive, all right? But someone who knows their next sentence, they're speaking moderately fast. You're going to avoid filler words if you want to be a highly persuasive speaker. Filler words are anything like like, you know. The one that I tend to use is right. Okay, I just put that on the end of a sentence. Okay, right? That's a filler, really. It's a habit that I've developed just because I like to interact, but that's a filler word, and it decreases my credibility when I do that. All right? And then avoid intensifiers. Who knows what an intensifier is? You guys probably can't read it. It's words like, yeah. Exactly. It's an unnecessary adverb, he says, okay? And we really like to use these when we're trying to fit that word count in the essays that we write, for college applications. It says 1,500 words. Oh, God. 1,500 words, and you're adding in words like especially, particularly, really, clearly. Those are words that don't add to what you're saying. Let's go to the next thing here. Okay. Speak loudly. Speak loudly. People who come across as persuasive and confident, they're speaking louder than necessary to be understood, okay? So just for this room, like who can understand me when I talk like this? In the back, you can understand me, right? But if you talk a little bit louder than necessary to be heard by the entire room, you're going to come across as a little more confident, more persuasive. So that's the rule of thumb, a little bit louder than necessary. Now, when we coached a debate here in Virginia, we had one debater who was notorious for speaking way louder than you needed to be heard in the room. And so he'd be yelling at this poor judge 3 feet from him. So, my final point is this. And we're just like cringing in the back row. So the ideal volume is just a little bit louder than is necessary to be heard. And the reason for that is you don't want your judge to have to strain to hear you. That's the only thing. And if you're speaking a little louder, you're owning that room, you're owning your stage, and that's what you want to go for. Number 5, use pauses. This is something really underutilized in homeschool debate, and that's because I think we are caught up with the time limits. We're like, oh man, I've only got 8 minutes. I have all this to cover. And again, we've already pared down to our 3 or 4 top points, but even then you have infinite amounts of evidence that you could read. Am I right? So you have infinite amounts of evidence, and you're afraid to use pauses because you're rushing to your next point. You can really use pauses to add to your persuasiveness. So if you're making a really good argument, you're going to say, this plan is going to turn Russia into our enemy. we risk restarting the Cold War with this plan. Now let's get to my next point. That just ruined whatever mood you had created if you jump right into that next point. When you finish your sentence, I used to have a debater that was afraid to finish sentences. All right, and what we literally had to do with her, she went on to be very, very successful, but what we had to do with her was get, you know those bells at the coffee shop, right? The bell that you ring if no one's there? I don't know what that's called. Anyway, the bell. What is that? I don't know. Yeah, a bell. So you push on it, and so every time that she needed to stop and make a period or a comma, we'd ring the bell and she would have to stop and end the sentence, take a breath, and go to the next point. So it's really easy because your minds are running 100 miles an hour. You're ready to get to that next argument. But you've got to use pauses to let your audience catch up. And especially if you've created a mood by making a really important argument. It would be a shame to waste that by saying, let's jump right into my next point. All right. The next thing that good speakers do is they vary their pitch. And pitch means the way that you're talking. So that means the inflections of your voice. You've all probably heard people who, they just kind of talk like this all the time, and no matter really what they say, it all sounds the same, and so the next point is about this, and it's really not true because of this. All right, and that person needs to vary their pitch a little bit more. So sometimes they need to get a little bit more excited, and then other times draw back. Now, there's different things here. One of the things that I struggled with when I was a new debater, and as you can tell, I love speaking, and so I get really excited. And so I was equally excited about my transition as I was about the evidence. You know, it's like, okay, now let's move on to our next point. And I was so excited about everything I had to say that it was essentially a different kind of monotone. And so what I had to work on was changing how excited I was and changing that pitch so that when I say, all right, now let's take a step back. We're going to go ahead and talk about this next point now. Now, this next point is this. So if you see, tone it down a little bit on the transitions or on reading the source tags, those kind of things can help you avoid a monotone on the other end of the spectrum. All right, so here's the quote from this. It says, avoid using the word very because it's lazy. A man is not very tired, he is exhausted. Don't use very sad, use morose. Language was invented for one reason, boys, he says, to woo women. And in that endeavor, laziness will not do. So, right.
I'm very inspired.
All right, and now this one is really fun. This is called matching your tone to your topic. So we talked earlier about when you're talking about millions of people dying, we want to respect that in the way that we speak about it. We don't want to be too academic about it. But we also don't want to be using a tone that doesn't match the topic. So in classical rhetoric, there's really 3 different tiers of rhetoric. The first one that we'll talk about is low style. And low style, if you click to the next, it's basically just, say you're introducing your friend, like when Ty introduced me. That would be a low style speech, okay? He's just like, all right, we're going to have Amy, yay, okay. That's a low style speech. There's no, I have a dream that Amy will speak. You know, that's not appropriate in that instance. So most debates are not a low style. Most debates fall under number 2, which is the mid style, which is saying their plan represents what is truly wrong with America today. That's kind of a low style tone that you could use. And then some speeches will be that high style. Some debates will be that. And high style is where you have Patrick Henry say, give me liberty or give me death. All right, but that would be most debates. You don't want to get that passionate. Okay, so most debates are right there in that mid style. But within that mid style, there's a lot of variation, okay? There are different tones you can have. So when Bush, right here in this picture, he's explaining to the American public that we're going to war in Iraq. And so he's using what I like to say a serious tone. So if you're talking about maybe in the Middle East resolution, we might talk about war, okay? When you talk about that, you should not talk about that the same way that you would talk about, let's go get some lunch, guys. You know, it's like, all right, let's get some drones, guys. You don't talk about that. You need to respect what you're talking about with the tone that you use. So you'd say, we're going to be talking next about their point, drone strikes in Saudi Arabia or whatever. Okay, so this next one is unfortunate things. And I like to throw most economic problems in this, okay? Are economic problems as serious as a war? Not really. Not to me, anyway. Are economic problems inspirational? Not really. So they get their own category, really, of what I call unfortunate things. that our GDP has decreased 27% in the past, well, we hope not. But anyway, okay, so unfortunate things, you just kind of use matter-of-fact tone. Oh, I did not even get that. You guys give me more credit. I didn't even think about that. The reason I have her here is because she's actually in this speaking engagement. She's introducing Obama. And so this is what I would call an insignificant speech, or a third, the lowest style speech on the 3 tiers of rhetoric. This would be the low style. So when I said Ty's introducing me, she's introducing Obama. So she's using a softer, kind of a subdued tone. I'd like to introduce my good friend Barack Obama. That's kind of a lower style. All right, that's hilarious too. Okay. Now this guy here, Scott Greenberg, he's an inspirational speaker. So he makes tons of money doing what he does and revving people up and inspiring them to be better people. And so he is using an important kind of excited tone. And that's great. If you can do that in your case, that would be great. But that obviously would be not appropriate if you're talking about the debt ceiling, okay, right? The debt ceiling, you don't want to be like that about that. So make sure you think about the content. Then we have things that are positive, things that are hopeful. And I've seen a lot of people get up there and just address those positive, hopeful things like a debate robot with a matter-of-fact tone. And 27 million lives will be saved because of this plan, so we urge an affirmative ballot. Like, come on. 27 million lives will be saved. Anyway, I don't know what plan that is, but if it was, it would be a positive thing, okay? So use a hopeful tone for that. Now, occasionally in debate, or maybe after you move on into real life, you might have the opportunity to give one of those high-style rhetorical speeches where you're saying something that's life or death, or you're trying to really change people, change something big in history or in the world. And this is where you get to use that high style, all right? That may be occasional in debate, but in real life, you may have that opportunity.